Hey everyone, I'm Stupid Fat Hobbit, and I'd like to take some time to talk about the birds. That's right, we are playing a Bysmiel summoner. This is a Conjurer that uses the Bysmiel set, which is a new set added in Forgotten Gods, to gain 2 birds instead of 1, and then centers the entire damage and everything else about the build around maximizing that bird DPS. As you can see, the single target is indeed quite respectable, and the survivability of this build is also fairly decent, given you've got 65% physical resistance with Blood of Drigab. So onto how the build works. Oh, first thing, for new players, this is not a build you can directly do off the bat. You really need the Bysmiel set in order to make this build work. If you want to play a summoner as a new player, I'd highly recommend the Rainbow Kabbalist, which I also have a video for. That is much more new player friendly. This is a set you want to do, or a build you want to do once you get the set, and it doesn't really work so well before. You can add a bird, onto a summoner build before you get the set, and you would do it on the Rainbow Summoner as well, but you're not going to have the same level of plus levels to skills and same level of scaling as you are with this set. So yeah, Bysmiel's Trinkets. This is a 4-piece set that actually is entirely jewelry based around 2 rings, an amulet, and a medal. This makes it simultaneously one of the most flexible and most restrictive sets in the game. It blocks out a lot of items and key slots, such as no Mark of Divinity. It's really hard to get your resist caps because the 2 resists that are the 2 rings that the two resists that you have on the rings are both relatively low value, and there's only one resist of each. And yeah, you also again only have 1 resist on your amulet. However, the fact that it is a 4-piece set allows it to combo with almost any other set in the game. Oftentimes you can't get the 4-piece. As you see over here, I've chosen the 3-piece Beast Collar, primarily because the Fizz resist bonus is quite strong, but we've also got some nice pet resist, some crit damage, and quite a bit of OA. My pet OA is sitting at about 51%, just sitting without any temporary buff sub. And or pet DPS damage is sitting at roughly about 1,000, which is more than enough for the build. So onto the skills itself. We've got our bird at max, Summon Familiar. This gains 5 projectiles when it hits max rank. Until then, it's only 4. The max projectiles are really important, and bird positioning is also really important for maximizing single target. These things shotgun, so you want to move your birds directly next to whatever you're trying to blow away in order to maximize their DPS. If they're just shooting from a distance, you're going to see a much reduced DPS loss. We've got Storm Spirit. This is fairly high because it adds flat LE. Lightning Strike, again, this is as high as we can get it. I wish I could get this a bit higher, but the only real way to do that would be the Mogdragon Shoulders, which is something I'm considering using for the build, but it would require me losing a good bit of survivability. And I've been pretty happy with the current setup, especially because, as I said, we're stuck using Bysmiel's Mark and also Mogdragon's Ardor, which means we have no safety net, and we are playing it hardcore. Usually I try to include at least 1 good circuit breaker on any build, but just couldn't squeeze it in on this build. It was too much of a DPS loss, so we have a relatively tanky high Fizz resist, but no actual safety net. The rest of the skills. Blood of Dreeg and Aspect of the Guardian, these apply to your minions. Self-explanatory. This should be pretty obvious for a pet build. First part, you don't really need max. This isn't a skeleton build, and pets are survivable enough as is. Second part, obviously you want this max. Doesn't scale very well over max. Hellhound, we've just got 1 point in him with Emberclaw because we add quite a bit of flat damage to him. Burn, Frostburn, and Electrocute from Bysmiel Landweaver. That's honestly pretty much the only reason I have a point in him, and that's it. We're not really scaling his base damage at all. Just there, a little bit along for the ride. Basically, these are 1-point investments, scaled up by gear, both of these. Under Shaman, we picked Briarthorn. Ground Slam, I originally wanted to have this maxed, well, not just maxed, but rank 17 for the fact that this turns from Generate Additional Threat into a Taunt, which is something, not a lot of people are aware of. But they required the Rifthound leg wraps, and the build was just too tight in resist, and I was really tight on points. So this wound up being something that was cut, and I don't really feel like I need it. The pets hold aggro more often than you might think, including in Shattered Realm. They seem to just, seem to hold aggro on the bosses a lot better than you might expect. And, granted, I haven't taken this character terribly deep into Shattered Realm, only like 25-ish, because I have a dedicated character for like high SR, which is my Trauma Warlord. But, it handles it just fine, and you can definitely take this build fairly deep in Shattered Realm. I've heard of people taking it to 70, no problem. But, You know, again, the lack of circuit breaker / safety net in this build in a hardcore environment means I would consider it a little bit less safe than something like the Trauma Warlord, which is better at surviving those worst possible scenario moments. Emboldening Presidents. This adds to our Fizz Resist, you know, OA for our pets as well. Bleed Resist Overcap as well, always nice to have. We're up to 91 way overcap on that, a little bit ridiculous. Oak Skin, Pierce Resist Armor. This is a personal preference of mine. I really think this and the corresponding Talented Nightblade are quite strong. Most people like to one point them, but honestly getting flat armor can be quite difficult for a lot of builds, so getting a little armor wherever you can help it is really nice. Plus, you know, the Pierce Resist makes gearing a bit easier. This is one of the, you know, personal preference kind of nodes that I decided to opt for. Kitty, as high as he'll go, good amount of extra damage. The build isn't centered around the cat. It isn't, you know, gonna have massively reduced damage for the cat. The birds are the main sources of the damage, but the cat adds quite a bit of extra DPS, and you know, especially for bosses and that kind of stuff. We've got Cataclysm's Eye in her offhand to help reduce the cooldown of the kitty. He's got only 10-second downtime, you know, 20-second uptime, 10-second downtime, so he's up most of the time, and it's definitely quite noticeable when he is up. Primal Bond, Absorb, crit damage. Again, should be pretty self-explanatory. Wind Devil, just for the elemental resist reduction and no other reason. That's about covers it for the skills. Doombolt, 1 point, just because I need to have something to bind to Shepherd's Call, because unfortunately we're not allowed to bind this stuff to our pets, so I have to spec into some random shitty skill just to trigger it. You know, Doombolt, good enough choice of any. Also has a little bit of reduction on health. This stuff is reduced against bosses, but still has a little bit of effect, so why the fuck not? On to Devotions. This is something I struggled with quite a bit, and I've tried quite a few different devotion combos. I wound up settling with this combo because generally the build has very high single target and it's a bit lacking in AoE. So Ultos is a constellation that has quite a bit of AoE, but is, you know, a little bit lacking in single target. It is also a pure lightning constellation, which means it gets scaled by Mythical Voidmancers. Now, if you remember, I only have around 1,000 increased pet damage. This, when it procs, is 10% chance of 1,500. So when it procs, this does double, more than double the damage of both, you know, the familiars, the lightning strike, etc. Altos, since being a lightning spell, also is affected by this doubling. You know, and therefore the damage can vary a lot. You know, I've seen low roll lightning crits of Altos like 12k, and I've seen high roll crits with a Voidmancer proc, you know, hit for like 45k, like chain lightning through everything. This is definitely more of an AoE than a single target proc. I'm not 100% certain these are the absolute best possible devotion for this build. There are a lot of ways to skin this cat, but having Ultos to balance out the single target, I mean the AoE issues of this build, while simultaneously having the Voidmancer synergy seems to have worked out better than most other things I've tried so far. I've tried Leviathan. I even tried Reckless Tempest, which I was quite disappointed with. Blizzard was also a really nice addition. I honestly think this is probably the best pet proc in the game right now, based on all the testing I've done, as far as just general all-around AoE and damage. And incorporating this into the build also helped quite a bit. We've got Rowan's for the resist reduction, Mogdragon, just massive damage boost. 2-point Bysmiel was kind of happy I managed to squeeze this in for a little bit more pet total speed. Shepherds, you know, the rest is fairly obvious given the affinities required and the bonuses for pets involved. A few other meteor options, a few other devotion options. I've seen, you know, the Ulzwin's Torch and Whirlpool build floating around a bit. I haven't personally tried it yet. It's a little bit lighter on the defenses and the other bonuses in pet scaling. And given, you know, Whirlpool seemed okay, but not that great. Yeah, I'm not too eager to bother with that again. Meteor, however, is decent, so that constellation combo might definitely have potential. But given what I've experimented so far, I've settled on this, and I'm pretty happy with it. On to the gear. Wrong key. Again, Bysmiel set. We've got Runebound Topazes everywhere just to help with the DA and HP. It's not much else, honestly, for a pet build. The Voidmancer Cord, which I already talked about, the 10% chance of that big proc. I consider this basically mandatory for the build for maxing out your DPS. Mythical Fiend Flesh, best on every summoner, no questions asked. 10,000 All Absorb, which is the only way to get a 10k All Absorb shield in the game. All the other ones for the other builds are always element specific, so this is one thing summoners have, which is kind of nice. They get a little spoiled in that regard. Mythical Overlord's Iron Grip, 8% physical resistance to bonds. Primal Bond, and also has DA for Bonds of Bysmiel and crit damage and OA. It's just really good overall. It's also got stun duration. I didn't have a very high stun duration roll on this one. I don't remember what the max is on this, but I could definitely afford to upgrade it at some point, especially because I'm not at stun resist cap. Beast Collar, we already talked about. It's worth noting that the Beast Collar's cowl has a use on it, which is 250 all damage and 20% attack speed. That attack speed being a pretty big multiplier, because pet attack speed is a really good scaler for just about everything you've got. That we've got over here. And pants. I just had to get a pair of resist pants. I mean, I wish I had something a bit better than this. This is just kind of this semi-ghetto quad resist pant that I had. Again, I wish I had something better than it, but this build has really big issues with resist. You're using 4 pieces of one set, 3 pieces of another. A lot of other pieces you have, like Feed Flesh, you only have 1 resist at that. This luckily has 2, which is one of the reasons it's even been in the build. But as I said, the Bysmiel set, 3 pieces with only 4 pieces with only 1 resist on them. And stuff like the Beast Color's Cowl having no resist whatsoever make this build very tight on resist. I would definitely recommend trying to get a pair of pants, some MI pants with at least 1 rare affix to help balance out the resists. As I said, I originally wanted to use the Rift Hound leg wraps, and I just couldn't get them in, given the resists involved. And that's including the fact that I am running double Seals of Might for, again, more physical resist and triple resist, which also help on the pet. So we should talk about pet resists. So with Blood of Driga, we're pretty much capped on almost everything. Bleed is the only thing that's significantly under. It's worth noting that despite Bleed being only 56, I've had no issues. Well, I'm not going to say no issues killing Kuba, but I still consider him a relatively easy fight. The pets do kind of die-ish on him, but your DPS is high enough that he generally dies too. Generally, I just quickly stick my pets on him, pop everything, and just, try to blow him up and his clones up before the pets run out. You probably are going to have to resummon your pets once during the fight. Pets have a relatively long cooldowns on their summons, so generally you want to completely finish him before the second wave of pets dies. But as I said, the build has very high single target DPS, so I haven't had an issue farming him at all. So his bleed being at 56 is considered acceptable, and all the other resists are more or less as good as you can get them. Chaos a bit low, but it hasn't been an issue so far. There's no boss like Kuba, which puts out massive amounts of chaos damage, which requires you to have capped chaos resist. Yeah, Mogdragon's Ardor, basically the best pet relic. I mean, this should be in pretty much without question. A word on the Offhand. I was using I should have put it in my inventory before I started the VOD, but hindsight's 2020. The Stronghold Defender. Let me grab my loot, and we can go look at that, if it's still in my stash. I don't even think it's still in my stash, so let's pull up Grim Tools and pull that up. But the Stronghold Defender, now we have to wait for it to search. But yeah, about the Cataclysm's Eye, this says reduced stun duration, CDR, which is very good for stuff like the Kitty. It only has 1 resist though, which made things a little tighter on the resists. The Offhand I was using before this, as I was trying to talk about, was this shield, Stronghold Defender. This has 3 good resists, additional physical resist, and maximum pierce resist. I was up to, I think, 71 or 72% physical resist using this shield before I dropped it. I really didn't want to drop it because I really liked being virtually immune to physical damage, but let's be real, 60% plus phys resist is basically as high as you can get in the game already, more or less, on a realistic build. And the game's not balanced around you having capped phys resist, it's balanced around having 20, 30 or so. So 60-ish was more than enough. I was just venturing into overkill territory. One thing I did really like is that even though I wasn't a block build and I only had the 35 default chance to block, since I was using, or still am using, 4 Runebound Topazes in my gear, which increased the damage blocked, I was scaling this up quite a bit as well. It was I think up to 1300 or something. So yeah, I didn't really like dropping that extra defense, but the primary catalyst behind me making that decision was the fact that I wanted to get a second Eldritch Mirror, and an Eldritch Mirror is a rare component that gives total speed to all your pets, move speed / attack speed / cast speed. This is, basically the best pet scaler in the game, because having them move around really quick is just as important as having them attack really fast. I had already had one in my chest, but I had a leathery hide in order to help with my stun resist, which was a bit problematic. And so if I was going to be putting an Eldritch Mirror in my helm, I was going to be losing the... if I was going to be putting... the Eldritch Mirror in my helm, I was going to be losing the leathery hide, so I needed to make it my stun resist elsewhere, which made the Cataclysm's Eye a lot more attractive, if not almost mandatory. This is kind of the go-to offhand for most summoner builds anyway, unless you're a Necromancer, in which case Reaper the Accursed winds up being an option. Other components are just to help max that resist. The Eldritch Mirrors are really, the most important ones, combined with, the Seals of Might, obviously. As I said, as far as leveling goes, you can level as a Conjurer, as a Summoner, straight up. It's a little bit slower than some of the other pet builds. As I said, I personally recommend a Kabbalist for a first character new player. And the Rainbow Kabbalist, which I have the video guide for, is what I still consider to be the most recommended build. Conjurer is kind of middle of the road, Ritualist being the hardest summoner to level for a new player because your skeletons just die all the time because you don't have a proper pet heal like Blood of Drieg. So Conjurer is kind of like, you've got a small amount of pets, they're fairly survivable, the AoE is just not going to be that good. When I leveled this character, I actually leveled it as a Wind Devil. I think that I uploaded the VOD of that run somewhere. I mean, I'm pretty sure I uploaded some Wind Devil speedrun at some point, but I pretty much just leveled straight up as Wind Devil and it worked pretty fine. I actually used the Lights Defender set to finish off the leveling, and the DPS was actually extremely high, especially with the Amber component. So I would recommend that if you've got that available. If you don't have this set, then even just leveling up with the Lokar set or just other general good rares and epics will serve you just fine. As far as Shattered Realm goes, as I said, I would be a bit careful going super deep and hardcore without a safety net. You've definitely got the DPS. You've definitely got the Fizz Resist. Like, the character's basically, set to go pretty deep, except for the fact that it's going to be a little more unforgiving of mistakes than some of the other builds like the Trauma Warlord. If you really, really wanted to add a safety net, you would be dropping Mugdragon's Ardor for Serenity, I would say. I mean, you obviously can't drop the metal, and honestly, Serenity and Mark of Divinity are really like the two safety nets that I consider most reliable at this point. The Reaper of the Accursed offhand, as I said, is also pretty good, but that doesn't apply to this build in particular. So yeah, I believe that covers just about everything. Oh, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. I'm Stupid Fat Hobbit. My Twitch is Twitch TV SF Hobbit. And good luck out there.